So this is basically a mini-series that we're putting together on how to engage with senior leaders. What it really is an opportunity for our members, both sides of the marketplace, to get to know each other and to better really understand and drive, I think, more meaningful conversations. So, Ian, you've been an amazing supporter of ours, over the years, and we're about to launch this new platform, which is going to be a place to share information. It'll be a place where you can connect and network, but at the same time support charities, which for us is a whole purpose behind what we're doing. So this sort of series of interviews with people like yourselves, we've done a few senior leaders now, and we're hoping to share information about what senior leaders care about, what they're responsible for, and sort of what information resonates with them. We know things have changed a lot, and I know from all the execs that we've interviewed for the platform launch, time is a critical factor. They don't have a lot of it. Their inboxes are completely overflowing with sales requests and inbound inquiries, and they are sick of being sold to. So, we're really grateful that we've got you here, and I know, your background. You were, I think, the top 6 for the CIO top 50, and I think you've done some of the IT News Benchmark Awards around, I think it was IoT, but you're currently the CIO of Water New South Wales. How on earth did you get to where you are?
Well, like all careers, Carl, it's a circuitous route. You don't actually have a concept in mind when you start out in a career. And I was an electrical engineer, had no idea I was going to get into IT, because in my day, electrical engineering was just, kind of power and a little bit of electronics and telecommunications. So, I think as you work through your career, a lot of decisions you make are serendipitous, and opportunities come and go, and those you take, you pursue. And I'm really loving the fact that perhaps the engineering aspect of my training, if you like, has fitted into the way I think about the world, and improvement and continual development of capability. And that's what IT is all about. But in an engineering sense, it's about the physical world merging with the digital world, and increasingly IoT enables that. It allows you to sense the physical world, measure it, see it, visualize it, and bring it into a digital framework for that. So, that's why I'm here, and have been working in utilities for the last 15 or so years. So getting a little bit of experience of that area.
It's an amazing area, and I turned 52 on Friday, just gone. I know I don't look it, it's okay.
No, I thought you were 26, so how did you do that?
But
what skin products are you using, Carl?
I don't use any. I just don't drink too much, and I try and keep a little bit healthy and work out every day. And I've got a 19-year-old daughter, which keeps me very, very busy. She's at uni studying all sorts of different stuff. But if you cast your mind back, like as a 52-year-old, if I cast my mind back to when I was, 15, 20 years of age or whatever, there was not a lot of IT around. You must have seen, talk about transformation. You must have gone from what? From green screens to where we are today?
Absolutely. We had a MIDI mainframe in our control centre in the railway when I first joined there. And everything was green screen. Absolutely. And very bespoke developed and very basic. Programming was a complex activity, but I'm not a programmer, so my foray really into IT came through telecommunications and then infrastructure. And that's an unusual path for CIOs. Typically, they're application people. But, over time, I've learned DevOps and application development. And really, the role of the CIO is not to be the expert on programming, but to be the expert on the linkage between business and the use of technology, the application of it. And so that's how I've traded. I've continually learned how businesses run and what makes a difference and how to leverage technology. And I think over the years, as you say, it's dramatically changed from open wire lines when I first joined the railway to now 5G and lots of opportunities for connecting remote devices into a large big data environment that we can then analyse and make sense of.
Yeah, and I think the whole IoT thing and SCADA and the critical infrastructure side of things, I mean, that in itself is, surely you would have to consider yourself a success because you've not had any issues in that area. I mean, is that how you look at these things? I mean, you could almost look at also, the remote working because of COVID and the success behind just everyone now being able to have a seat at the table and having a conversation, whereas before, a few people in a meeting room, the loudest voice kind of wins, whereas now it's sort of a little bit different. I mean, what does success look like for you? Because I know I've just jumped around a bit there with the SCADA and the meetings, but there's so much stuff going on for a CIO. How do you define what success looks like on a daily basis? I'm thinking it's just no complaints.
Well, that's impossible. You always get complaints. But I think value is the word that probably springs to mind most in terms of defining success. If, investment in technology is leading to greater value, whether that's for revenue growth or cost reduction or improving the customer experience, and however you measure value, and often it comes down to an equation around risk as well, because organisations build processes that are inherently prone to failure, and IT systems kind of codify those processes so we have less likelihood of failure and more control, better governance. I think, though, you make a great point that what COVID has done is brought the IT folks around the table, particularly those who are, introverts, and a lot of us are, have enabled them to have a voice, as you say. And I think that's been an incredibly powerful benefit, as well as, I think, the globalisation of talent, the ability to access people wherever they are rather than having to bring them into a physical office has opened up so many new avenues of opportunity. And I think the other bit for a CIO is the talent acquisition process, making sure we have the right people on the bus who are passionate about the business and can bring innovation to the way we think about stuff.
It's really hard. I know, you talk about being introverted. People look at me as a bit of an extrovert, but I'm absolutely not. I've done these Myers-Briggs course test, and I think I'm an INFJ, which is a complete introvert. I'm quite a rare personality type, but I look on the outside to be extroverted, but I'm not. And I think the whole remote working thing for me has helped me, because I don't do well in crowds, in conferences. We were talking about this before, those events. I've got to speak at one next week, and I'm not. I just don't do these things. I'm kind of.
Are you tired at the end of the day when you're at a conference? Because I think that's what I hear from introverts. But what that doesn't mean you can't be charismatic or influential. And I think that's the key, right? That we've learned with our introverts in New South Wales, that many of them, when you give them a voice, and they won't jump in necessarily, they won't want to be the life of the party or the person at the centre, but they have some great thinking and are very persuasive and can win the day. We just got to give them an opportunity, and I think that's where remote working has been helpful, because it has, particularly for people in our business who are rural, not in Sydney, which is the centre of the universe, but actually all of our water is over the other side of the mountains. That's where our focus is. That's where farmers struggle. That's where local water utilities need to build sustainability solutions, and that's where, therefore, our people can do their best work.
Which is amazing, and it really is. People don't really understand how much work goes into running a water facility. But I can tell you, when I first started the meetmagic thing, 2017, 2018, I ran out of money. I had to go and get a job. 2019 was when it really started, sort of mid 2019, and we started. I think the drought was pretty heavy there at the time. Towards the end of 2019, the farmers just couldn't get water. They were not showering and not having a bath just so they could give water to their animals. And we were doing meetings at the very beginning. I think we had like 10 execs that were supporting us at the time, and one of them was Dhiren Kulkarni, who I think was a CIO of Westpac, one of the divisions of Westpac, and he nominated for the donation to go to BioBale. And this blew me away, because one of the first charities that we supported was BioBale, and it was $500 per donation back then, and that $500 paid for 22,000 litres of water to go to the farmers, so they could actually have a shower for the first time in months, or they could feed their animals. Just amazing. I mean, I know it's all turned around now, but water's everywhere, and we've got plenty of it now. But back then this was just 2000, almost going into COVID, into 2020. There was no one knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that had been on the back of only about 3 years of serious drought, and it shows you how quickly things can deteriorate. Because I went out there in late 2019 as well, and there was hardly a blade of grass anywhere around. Cows were looking pretty sad, and most farmers were selling up their livestock. And I think, it does show what kind of society we're living in now, where increasingly we're dependent on each other to work in an ecosystem. And I think this is where, not one organisation can solve the problems. And as you point out, in the good times, those farmers will contribute to the philanthropic society. But in tough times, they need to lean on those around them who can help. And we need to work together to solve the world's problems. And that's why it's great to be part of meetmagic, because I think that's what this is all about.
And we're really grateful for your support. And I know you've done quite a few of our meetings, and we're going to get to what is a good meeting in your eyes. But what's been some of the biggest challenges for you as a CIO over the years? I mean, you've gone on that big journey, and transforming any company is always going to be hard. But what's the one thing that stands out as a challenge for you?
Well, I think the number one thing remains people. I mean, technology always works as long as the people don't touch it. And unfortunately, it's designed for people, and we don't design things still well for people to use things intuitively in corporate land. I think finally consumerization has solved a lot of that problem. The iPhone, the intuitive interface that we've got brings people to the technology. And I think IT CIOs in particular have really struggled to bridge that divide. And that's because a lot of our focus is on integrating stuff in the back end. And so it's very engineering centric. But I think the biggest challenge is undoubtedly people. And when you say the word transformation, it's about people moving from one state to another, one way of working to another one process to another, and the inertia in moving people is very significant. And it's like if you bring a new product or a new concept to market, the friction is big because people love what they do currently. It's like changing governments, as we're contemplating doing at the moment. The friction, despite the distaste maybe for the current federal government, is massive in changing. And that's true in our organisation as well. And I think for me, the constant challenge is keep diving into the why this is worth doing, and bringing people along and trying to excite them about the opportunities for the future, and that technology is a bit of a backstory. It's not the primary issue. It's what can we become? Imagine turning from where we are to where we want to be, and it's that imagination that actually defines a great company and a CIO that's working collectively with the exec team.
You're literally the same as me. I mean, I think it's almost like our job is to create the culture and share the vision and bring people along on that journey. And so you're literally in startup land almost, but obviously in corporate. It's the same principle, making sure you've got the right bums on seats so you can scale properly, so it's the right people, making sure they're aligned to the purpose and the mission, and bringing them, getting them excited about the future, which actually scares me a little bit, Ian, because you're a CIO, and I know how hammered CIOs get. We've got execs. There's 1,000 execs that we've been dealing with now, and some of them, like Lewis, who's the Chief Digital Officer of Macquarie Bank, he tells us he gets 300 cold emails a week requesting his time. It's just excessive. And I know from an employee perspective, most employees get around 300 emails a week. And, there's a report I read recently from Atlassian that said the average employee checks their email 36 times per hour. Now, that's a bit of a worry because it's this, all of a sudden we're being bombarded with so much information. The sad reality is, when you check your email that often, you're actually losing IQ points. I think you can lose 10 IQ points for checking your email 36 times. 36 times.
Absolutely. Yeah,
36 times. It's actually the equivalent of missing one entire night's sleep, which is just, it's kind of crazy when you think about that. But technology is obviously doing all this to us. And so my question, I think, around where this is all going is, from a meeting perspective, when you're out there looking for something to solve a problem, and this is where we're going with meetmagic, is We know that 10 or 15 years ago, you would have a meeting with somebody because you want to understand what that product is and how it could fit into your business and whether it could solve a problem. Whereas today, you've got access to groups of peers where you can go and find them and talk to them yourself, and you can basically go and do all your research. So a salesperson today doesn't need to come in and start selling anymore. This is what we're hearing. So I'm really interested in your opinion on this. You know, when you're out there looking for a new product or solution, what's the process do you go through? Do you go out to looking for vendors to come in and have that conversation with you? And how has that thing changed, or has it changed over the past few years? Because honestly, we're seeing outbound marketing as probably the number one contributor to the flooded inboxes that everyone's got in right now, and they're getting aggressive in how they're doing it. So I'm curious as to how do you when you've got a project, how do you select who you go out and have a conversation with?
Well, I think all those things you just said are true, and you know, I guess when I think about a project, I'm thinking about, as we were discussing before, the current state and the future state of the business, and not really thinking about the product. So the discussion with the market, and I agree, peer networking is extremely powerful because people who've already solved a problem with a similar use case and can talk to the way they've integrated products, system integrators, their enterprise architecture, and delivered an outcome which sometimes is surprising when you talk to peers compared to where your own mindset is. It's a massive opportunity to open up our thinking. And so, yeah, I think peers are really important. Clearly, vendors are also important, though, but they need to typically appreciate they're working within an ecosystem and that the use case is important, not the product. And therefore, you know, the more a product vendor can put themselves in the shoes of our organisation and understand the entire enterprise architecture, which is really tough to do, and contemplate where they fit to meet the specific use case and the business value proposition, the better. And I've found only the best sales guys can do that. And so it's a rare breed because most are flogging their product and want to take your time to introduce you. And could I just say, above all, it's security vendors. And the last thing we need is more security vendors selling us yet another tool. What we actually need is a framework into which the vendor sees themselves as a piece of the puzzle. And that lack of perspective is really damaging, I think, particularly in that market.
It's really interesting because we're trying to mandate there's no selling and no pitching of product in these meetings because we know that the success comes in terms of problems solved, not in terms of products sold. You measure your success in terms of, you know, and you can pretty much you can uncover what's happening from annual reports, you know, strategies of the company from annual reports. You can do that background research. In fact, my football team's Nottingham Forest here, and I got up at 3:30 this morning to watch them lose to bloody Bournemouth. But I was talking to my partner about this because we were saying, you know, about the podcast, and I was saying how salespeople today just don't do the research anymore on they want to go and have a chat with Ian, but by the time they turn up to Ian, they've done no research whatsoever. They don't understand the product or how their product fits within their organisation, and they're just trying to pitch products, and it's a problem. The least thing they could do is understand a little bit about what Ian's problems or challenges are, and they can find them pretty easily.
Yeah, well, because salespeople by nature are typically good networkers, and the network knows a lot. And you don't necessarily start with the CIO. Like, I think a good salesperson, they all want to meet the CIO, but actually a more ground-up approach, getting inside the organisation, chatting to techos, chatting to people in the business, and then bringing a more solid proposition to a CIO is a far more effective approach. And someone who's done their research will get in my door, absolutely, because they can demonstrate an understanding and a perspective that might be different, and they're bringing something innovative to me, which is immensely valuable. So I certainly welcome the opportunity to meet with well-credentialed and well-researched salespeople where they can bring something to me that otherwise I can't get. You know, I'm not blind to the fact there's so much I don't know, and that those meetings are such a great opportunity for me to learn. But if it's just a pitch, if it's just a flogging process of, here's some great examples of how we can, make our product configured to meet your requirements, here's how versatile our product is, it's not helpful for me. It's got to be specific.
That is really, we're hearing this all the time from execs. Just stop selling and have a conversation. And we want these meetings that we're setting up to just be that, just a conversation about, what's happening in your world. And they do a bit of research in the background. That's pretty much answered a question around how we can make meetings better and what probably some of your pet peeves are around meetings. I could think of nothing worse than a salesperson turning up and just throwing up products. We've had some examples where salespeople have used the 45 minutes just to put up a PowerPoint, and they've spent 45 minutes or 40 minutes going, there you go, and then they've said, what do you think about that? And I'm like, what a complete waste of time for everybody. It literally
especially when they spend the first half hour telling you about their company. It's like, great, thanks. I can read all that on the internet if I'm interested, but what I really want to know is what could our relationship form into, not all about you and your company. I think that a lot of salespeople think they've got a pre-prepared deck that they have to get through, and that's a really sad indictment, I think, on industry, that we've driven salespeople to think like that. I think it comes from sales managers who lived in that past life of needing to introduce their company to get any credibility. But actually, credibility comes from what you've done with similar companies and use cases that are applicable. And increasingly, I'm seeing salespeople starting to get that concept. And the other side, I think, is us as CIOs. We have to be a bit open to this, that we can't just say, oh, we know it all and we haven't got time for this and all that sort of thing. But we have to be selective as well. So it's how you go through that prioritization process. It's really tricky.
And I love what you said before about it's a great learning curve for you for these meetings, because that ultimately we want that to happen. We want you to get insights from some of these companies that you might not have thought about that might help a project in the future or help you move to where you're trying to get to. One of the sad realities is that I think marketing teams have not really fully aligned to the sales teams yet. Those marketing teams are still driven with what they call MQLs, which is marketing qualified leads. And that might be where you've turned up to a conference and they've scanned your badge and you've picked up some of the junk off their stand, the landfill, and then they've taken your email back to the office and they've put you in the outbound nurturing campaign to try and get you to download a white paper, to try and get you to have a meeting. It's like, oh my God. And so all of that is a lead in terms of marketing, but from a salesperson's perspective, it's not. It's completely different. So I know that times have definitely shifted. All of the execs that we're dealing with don't want to be sold to, and that's because they might be at home like you are right now. They might just be sat with the kids in the background. There could be a whole number of reasons. It's about respect for the individual now as well, and you absolutely can't go in there pitching product. We mandate no selling. So if you're getting anyone selling to you, you should stop them and say no selling. But look, Ian, it's been a great chat. I think we want to share all these thoughts. I think you've given loads of tips there for salespeople looking to try and get a meeting. What would be a tip or suggestion for people trying to meet with you? I mean, you mentioned before, do your background and do a bit of research. Would that be your number one tip?
That'd be the number one. I think finding an angle that would be attractive to me will get in my calendar, absolutely. And someone who particularly understands our industry and the application of technology in a kind of use case scenario that we have in mind, even better. But also, I think if there's a really innovative concept and that, hasn't necessarily been thought through for the application in our environment, but which brings us maybe into an ecosystem where that could be promoted, I'm also interested. But ultimately, one of the things I think is really important, Carl, is that they've made a commitment to you, and it's not unreasonable, therefore, that I make a commitment to them to give them some time. And I think that's that willingness, I think, to give a bit in order to get a bit is really important on all sides of the equation. And if it's just one-way win, then no one's going to be happy. So if they're just trying to flog something, then that's one-way win.
Yeah.
But if they're willing to give a bit and understand and learn themselves and then teach me, then both parties can be happy. And if their heart's in the right place and they're focused on giving back to the community, then I think that's another really great reason.
Do you know what? You've done 8 meetings with us. I'm not very good at math. I left school at 15, but that's each one of those meetings that you've done has helped 18 sick kids for Starlight. So that's 8 times. What's that? 8 times 18. Dude. So that's over 100 kids. Was it 90?
It's a pretty good feel-good story, isn't it? And I think, and every vendor I speak to loves it as well. So it's a two-way thing. It's not like I'm going, I need to bleed you so you can spend some time with me. It's actually because they demonstrate they have a social purpose beyond just their revenue and profit profile.
And that's so important these days. I think every company is looking for an ESG strategy. They better do, because there's a lot of impact capital out there, and you're not going to get it if you haven't got a purpose behind you. And you can't just purpose wash and tack on something to make yourself look good. It's actually got to be genuine. And you've been very genuine to us and super supportive. And what we've done in the past 2 years since COVID hit, because we had literally 30 or 40 execs in 2020 when we first started. We've now got 1,000, and so that growth. But not only that growth, we've donated $1 million to charity as a result of these meetings in 2 years. So that revenue growth has done hockey stick. And this new platform that we're building, we're hoping is going to do a number of things for you as a CIO. It's going to cut out all the emails backwards and forwards, because there's a lot of automation in there, but it'll match you based on your preferences. So if you're looking for, certain projects in the future, and you put that down as your interest, our AI and matching engine will match you with people that you can have a conversation. So it's a purely curated conversation that should add massive value to both sides of the equation. And of course, each meeting supports charity. So, Ian, you've been a great support for us. I can't thank you enough. We're coming up to the half-hour mark. I know you're a busy man. Thank you.
Yeah, great, Carl. I look forward to the new platform. I think that'll add some value, as you suggest, and it's all about matching. So I think the concept's good. It always requires us to put a bit of effort into profiling ourselves and our business, but I think as long as that's easy to do, I'm certainly on board and keen to. So I've signed up for the beta. Good on you, mate.
We've had an amazing team designing it. I mean, we've actually sat down with execs and said to them, what do you like, what don't you like about the current meeting processes? And I know that execs spend 50% of their time in meetings, and that's increased obviously with COVID.
I wish I could get away with 50%. But really the challenge is thinking time and innovation time.
Yeah.
And quality time with people rather than just quantity. And so I do agree. And I think, the more a vendor comes in and can go, bang, here's the issue I think we want to talk about today, and here's my approach to thinking about that issue with you, and wanting to understand, then fantastic. That maximises our time and gives us something back in the meantime. So,
speaking of working from home, you've just seen that's my 18-year-old dog Bender just rocking up. That's the world that we live in today, Ian. But
another soccer fan. Where's the scarf?
Honestly, what Nottingham Forest have done in this season, we were at the bottom after the first 7 games. We were almost at the bottom with no points, and we're now we were literally 3 points away from automatic promotion into the Premiership, and we just lost 1-0 this morning to the number 2 team. So it's not as though we've lost to anybody.
So Bournemouth will be in Premiers next year.
They've gone. They're up. Yeah, and then we've now got to go into a playoffs, I think, with Luton, Sheffield and Huddersfield. And
right. Some names that have been up and down over the years, all of them. So.
Well, I mean, we've not been in the Premiership for 20 years. And
20 years, really?
Brian Clough returning in his grave.
Yeah, right. Tragedy.
But,
there might be a few Chelsea players on the market soon, mate. So.
Well, and Everton, they're going down.
Yeah, are they?
Yeah,
they beat Chelsea, but I mean, Chelsea's looking for an owner, isn't it? And so Rudiger's left. I think they're going to be a bit denuded. They're my team, so
Which one? Are you a Chelsea fan?
Yeah, I'm a Chelsea fan.
Are you really a headhunter?
Well, I'm an Aussie, and so I didn't have the tribal alignment that you undoubtedly had from being brought up there. But my kids got into Chelsea, early on when they were doing well back in the Lampard era and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. They were great days, and they still are today. I mean, watching the games on a Sunday morning, I sit at my desk here and watch the games on a Sunday and pay all the wages and do all the admin stuff, and it's just the joy of watching a crowd of 50,000 just singing. It's just, I just watched Nottingham Forest because we were away at Bournemouth, and there's only 1,200 of us down at that, but they were actually louder than 80,000 Swans fans.
Really? You gotta love the English soccer fan. I remember going to Wembley once on a train out of the centre of London, and the singing on the train to see Man City versus Chelsea was unbelievable.
So good,
and it was just so much fun. The jokes they crack and the kind of antics they get up to is just classic.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned tribal. It literally is. I remember the Chelsea headhunters. They you would not want to cross one of those after you've had a few pints. I mean, we in Nottingham Forest had some crazy people. We had there's a very famous hooligan called Paul Scarrett, and he was banned from every game in Europe. He was a vicious, violent man, and he ended up. I think he ended up in jail and getting banned from every game. But
was he one of those classic skinhead types that
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, total. I mean, he gave football a bad name, so they kicked him out of football, out of going to every game ever again. But it's cleaned up a lot since then, of course. But you've still got the rivalry of they are, and it is tribal. You wouldn't. You can just see the like, for example, our supporters, when they've just gone to Bournemouth, they've covered up their tops, so you don't know who they are, and their colours are
the street. Yeah, right.
Literally, they'll throw something at you. So it's anyway. Thank God we're lucky over here in Australia. We don't have any of that, which is very cool. But,
well, there's passion, and then there's taking it too far, isn't there? So.
Exactly. Yeah. Ian, thank you so much again for your support. I'm very, very grateful, and we'll put this podcast together and we'll share it with you before, so you can hear it and have a look at it. And we might just use it.
I hope it adds some value to your vendor team, and that makes them feel like they have a way in, because it's not intended to say it's hard, impossible.
No, and sales is hard. I mean, I spent 20 years in sales, and getting in the door is the hardest thing ever. And I sat with a CTO last Thursday. His name's Rainer Reddy, and he's told me. I think he was over at Fairfax once, but he told me that the outbound cadence of these marketing people now is getting so aggressive that you end up in a sequence. You probably notice it. You get all these emails coming in. It's in a sequence. Hey, Ian, did you get my email? Hey, I'm just following up. Boom. And these are all cadence that they send.
Yeah, they're bumping it to the top of your inbox as their favourite first line. So,
yeah, and so when you do,
I'm actually thinking getting out of LinkedIn, it's that bad, because they just spam me constantly. So
that is something we're trying. So our platform is going to become a place where it's a quiet place for you to go and meet your peers and solve some problems.
That could be well worth considering.
Yeah,
very good. All right, Carl. All the best, mate. And thanks for the time. Cheers.
Pleasure, mate. I really appreciate yours too. See you soon.